Well, I see it as a tool for changing the way everyone thinks about food. So I agree, only a small percentage of the population will be able to actually do tests like the Zoe test and test their personalized nutrition. But the fact that we talk about it, we're talking about on this show, I think is spreading the word that the old model of it's all about calories and calorie counting and basically food is fuel is complete nonsense. And, once you start realizing that everyone's personalized, there's a different response to food, and that your gut microbes are pretty key to this, you're changing the whole conversation about food. And to me, that's the most important thing, that the more people talk about this, the more we can change these disastrous ideas we have about food and the power of the food companies and the lobbyists and governments, etc. So I think that's how it fits in. The more we talk about personalization, the less we talk about calories. The more we talk about the quality of food, the more we talk about people thinking about what they're putting in their mouths because it's full of chemicals and it affects all these other microbes which produce other chemicals. We're changing that whole discussion about food. We're talking about really getting into the quality of it and making people appreciate what they're eating and realizing that the 50% of food that we eat really should be taxed into the dustbin. And that's the word. So I see it's all part of this big picture. And that's what I think really engages me, gets me out of bed in the morning, makes me want to write, as you know, spending hours and hours writing books, which is not, which never makes you any money, but it allows you to talk about this subject. And I think I'm optimistic that there's more and more people talking about this now, and it's a ground up movement. Governments aren't going to do anything. Big food isn't going to do anything. But if enough people are talking about personalized nutrition, the microbiome, they're going to be talking about food quality and the food environment. And I think that's, by combining the science with the politics, that's the way we can get things changed.
In terms of the dietary guidelines as they are today, is there a problem with them? I know that some people suggest there are large problems with the dietary guidelines. Do you see a sort of significant problem with the guidelines, or is it more the way the environment is set up that is affecting the way people are eating?
Well, I mean, the guidelines are an obstacle because they are so old-fashioned and so out of date and give the idea that everyone is identical. Mm-hmm. And they really haven't shifted much in 20 years. And they're giving people generally bad advice that most doctors still give their patients, because doctors might be one of the few people who read the guidelines. And so they're passing on this false information that, a lot of it is demonstrably false. And it stays on official websites for years and years after the evidence has changed. So that's what I don't like about it. But you could argue on a pragmatic level, well, no one follow, only 2% of the population follow it anyway, so why does it matter? But I think but I think the fact that that's the official guidelines, when we know that if you ask most professors of nutrition around the world, they would say, well, I don't agree with half of them. We should move on. It's a problem. But I think, we need to move beyond those guidelines and just start realizing there isn't one set of guidelines any of us can write for humans, and we've had discussions about there isn't one set of calories that everyone should have. These things are rather meaningless, and actually try and narrow down our complexity of our food and our human bodies into some simple list to follow, which is either impossible to follow or is plain wrong. But it's getting us to prescribe into certain patterns, like, in my books, I go into this in quite a lot, but, like never skip a meal, always eat little and often, you've got to drink 8 glasses of water a day, all this sort of stuff, which is pseudoscience when you look at it now. And you say, well, why should we all do this? Why are we all the same anyway? Why don't we do what's right for the individual? So, yeah, I'm against guidelines. I'm very rude about them. And I think that the only people that benefit from them is the food industry, I think is the honest answer.